The Downtown Rams podcast is brought to you by Rams On Demand, Seat Giant, Vibe 305, and RWO, Rams World Order. Now enjoy the show.
Down the middle to the end zone. Whoa. Caught by Brandon Cooks. Shoot your arrows.
It picks. Nickel Roby Coleman throws.
End zone caught. Touchdown. Tyler Higbee. Cooper Kupp plucks it out of the air and gives the Rams the lead. LaMarcus Joyner returns to the lineup with an interception in London. 35-30. Robert Woods, first down 20. 10-5. Touchdown. LA! No, it's Goff who keeps it. And Goff goes crashing into the end zone. Aaron Donald almost beat the football there and comes away with his third sack of the afternoon. Met immediately and sacked. Corey Littleton, have yourself a day. And he gets gobbled up. Savage has to eat it as Michael Brockers picks up the sack. He's decked by Ebukam. Picked off. Marcus Peters. Strutting his stuff. Mark Barron the last 4 weeks has been a Pro Bowler. He picked off Dak Prescott into Seattle territory, into the clear. 30, 20, Farrell Cooper 10. Farrell Cooper at the goal line.
Cousins sacked. Ndamukong Suh. Of all the guys, it's the rookie John Franklin Myers who knocks it out of Cousins' right hand.
Todd Gurley, 20, 10. Gurley for MVP. Touchdown LA.
Welcome back, everybody. It's Joe Curley here with another Downtown Ram podcast. Number, what is it, Jake? 120 what?
141.
141. 141 for the down. We're much too cheery considering the Rams scored just 6 points on Sunday night in a potentially season-altering 15-6 loss to the Chicago Bears, who held the Rams without a touchdown for the first time under the boy wonder, Sean McVay. And here we are on a late Monday, just trying to figure out what the heck happened. I'm going to bring in my extra special guest. You may have heard this name before, Jake Ellenbogen.
Thanks for having me on the show, Joe. Really humbled by this. I first off, name things. We got to play a game. What is higher than Jared Goff's QBR? Because, I don't know, 6.2. I think, my little cousin, I think, is 7, so he's older than Jared Goff's QBR. Yeah, that was just not a very good game at all. First off, when you have a quarterback that has a 19.1 passer rating and you decide to have him throw the ball 44 times, you messed up somewhere along the lines. Now, the guy who has the 19.1 passer rating absolutely is at fault. But I don't know. I just think this game was so bad. It was so bad to the point. I think it was the worst game I've ever watched, honestly, straight up. The bright lights of the Sunday Night Football, you get the presentation with, Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth, although I know a lot of people don't like Collinsworth, but, NBC, primetime, Soldier Field, and it just felt abysmal. It was, Joe knows. You guys know. Abysmal was the word that just kept coming out of my mouth and what I kept putting on Twitter. I really couldn't sum this game up anymore. I said it last week.
I'm gonna sum it up for you. Let me take this. Things got so bad on Sunday night that Rams fans were on Twitter comparing this Rams team to the St. Louis Rams under Jeff Fisher. That's the meme that has popped out of it. So, you guys felt it, and we don't have to dig the knife in too much. But things were so bad that people were drawing the line, saying that it reminded them of the Jeff Fisher era, which is not unfair. So It was bad. It was cold, but I don't think the weather can be an excuse because it was not windy and it was not wet. It was just a little chilly, probably about 25, 30 degrees cooler than the coldest it gets around here. And you combine that with the defense, the pressure. And the funny thing about it is I think, Jared has shown the ability to perform under pressure with guys in his face. So maybe it was just the combination of a bad night against a good opponent, maybe a bad plan. Certainly I was one of those people that was kind of, inner monologue screaming at the TV, asking why Todd Gurley wasn't a bigger part of the game plan. And like I said on Twitter last night, it was the confluence of all the kind of little criticisms that people have about the McVay era. They were poor in the red zone. They got away from Todd Gurley, and he wasted his timeouts for some reason. Down just 9 points in the fourth quarter, the game got away from them because you couldn't call timeout and get the ball back, and protect your two possessions late. So really, nothing went right. And I don't think, we're going to spend this podcast kind of doing a post-mortem, but, I think at the end of it, remind me to say that I don't think people should belabor the point. Like, I think this is one that you're going to have to flush. And I'm going to say it right now, I would not mind, if I'm a Rams fan, I would not mind the Chicago Bears coming to the Coliseum in January, because I don't think they could do this twice in 1 year against this team.
Yeah, and, I totally agree, and I think the thing that really kicks you is if this was a 49-6 blowout and the Rams had no chance, I think people would have taken that better than they took 15-6. It was so much like the Vikings game last year. It was so much like the playoff game. And it was so much like the last time they played on Sunday Night Football during a regular season game, fighting for the division title against the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle. It was like all that mixed into one. And really, the thing with, fans, and I can speak from experience, is that, look, you go through the entire work week or school week or whatever week, and that's what you get. You waited all that time. You did your job. The Rams didn't do theirs. So it's very, it can be frustrating in that regard. When you put it on Monday or Sunday Night Football in front of everybody, that's when it becomes kind of people get embarrassed by their team and they stick by their team. They just don't like that. So, it was a lot of, things together. With that being said, a huge silver lining was I thought this defense was awesome. I really did. They gave up 13 points. And really, 2 field goals and a touchdown. They've only given up 2 touchdowns the last 2 weeks, and they've been to offensive. Well, the last 2 weeks they've had the last 2 touchdowns have been to offensive linemen. So strange, but I guess we'll take that over giving up giant chunks plays to Tariq Cohen and having Taylor Gabriel or Allen Robinson face catch you or something like that in the end zone. Like it was I thought it was a great thing to take away, and it just made it more aggravating. The defense was doing their part, and you can't even. It's like, Joe, another thing that bothers me about this game is like you can't even pin it on the offense collectively because there were still some guys that were stepping up. Robert Woods was still making some of those crazy body contorting catches. Brandon Cooks was getting open at will, and I'm just gonna say it. People will. First thing people say, I notice, is, well, you don't know if that guy was open downfield. You don't know if anybody was open. Goff took the sack because it was a coverage sack. But then they show the replay, and it's like, no, Cooks was wide open. Woods got open. Like, Goff struggled for the second straight game, and it begs the question, that hit he took in Kansas City, he has not been the same since. What is wrong with Jared Goff? I think that's the big one here, because the Rams look like they have quote-unquote fixed their defense for the time being. And obviously it's not a surprise that all of a sudden things got better when Aqib Talib came back. But they get 3 turnovers, and the Rams can only buy 6 points out of it. To me, that's the biggest, the most frustrating thing of them all. When you get 3 turnovers in a game like this, those are gifts. I mean, Trubisky was giving them to the Rams, but at the same time,
he was terrible.
Oh, he
was
let's
bad.
33.3 passer rating. He had a 31.9 QBR.
I mean, I got kind of what radio show was I on? I was on Sirius XM or CBS. I was on somewhere, and I started to talk about how I'm not all impressed with Mitch Trubisky, and that I thought that the kind of the system QB they've got as a backup there, the kid from Missouri, what's his name? Crap. Anyway, I almost think he might be better for them in the short term, for this season. Did I lose you?
Well, I don't. The problem with that is I don't feel like Trubisky is fully healthy.
I just
dislocated shoulder. I don't think he's gonna, just get better over. It's not gonna get better over a course of 2-3 weeks.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say this: running QBs in this league, I don't care that the spread is now in, and you've got the highest scoring season in NFL history, and the game has evolved. You still cannot survive in the NFL running around like he does, and it's gonna whether it's RG3 or name whatever other runner. It's not going to last. And it's no doubt, it's partly his style is why he's hurt, which is why it continues to be insane that they drafted him over some of the guys on the board. Pat Mahomes was in that draft class, wasn't he?
With Trubisky, yes.
Yeah. They picked him over Deshaun Watson and Pat Mahomes.
The problem is...
good luck with that.
I'm for Trubisky. I think this is somebody that's thrown 6 touchdowns in a game. I think this is somebody that has played pretty well this year. This is his worst game of his career, but he's also coming off injury. I don't think he was entirely ready. And to be honest, he hasn't gotten the production out of Allen Robinson that they were expecting. He's done a lot of it, on the move. I've been impressed with Trubisky overall. With that being said, last night he was really bad. The running game picked up the pace. Jordan Howard had his first 100-yard game since I think last year. Tariq Cohen obviously looked just as bit explosive as I expected, and we were talking about in the podcast. Once again, my guy Trey Burton was completely ignored. I just don't understand it.
Was he even active yesterday?
He was. He had 5 targets for 2 catches and 22 yards. But
okay,
I want to say
I didn't even recognize him.
I want to say one thing on to a receiver that I respected a little bit until that game, and I gotta say I lost a ton of respect for Joshua Bellamy. Aaron Donald was engaged with, I believe it was James Daniels, and he dove at his knee. And I'm sorry, you could not tell me for a second that it wasn't intentional, and it wasn't with intent. I look at that play, and I know it was called. I know it's a chop block. I get it, all that. I still think he needs to be fined a ridiculous amount of money because that's the MVP of the league,
sure he will.
And he's diving at his knee for no reason. And God, it just seems like Aaron Donald is indestructible. Where you see him go down awkwardly and he gets right back up, but God, one of those days it's not going to happen that way. And the Rams, I can tell you right now, the Rams would be a lot better off without some other players than without Aaron Donald. And I'll be honest with you, I was starting to wonder when Sean Mannion would come out in this game because I just felt like Goff's confidence was gone. You weren't going to get anything out of him towards the end of that game. So I'm not saying Mannion wins the game, but there's just something off. And the thing is, whether it's he all of a sudden got hurt. I mean, I've been saying this for weeks. I mean, even in the Kansas City game, you look at the stats, and you're like, wow, he was really good. But if you really think about it, he missed a ton of throws. He's missed a ton of throws in games that he's played well. As I said, the only game where he's absolutely, he was pretty much perfect was the Minnesota game. My biggest issue with Goff is when people say system quarterback, by definition, he's a system quarterback. And this game, I know I'm diving into a rabbit hole and people are going to be mad, but this game proved that. You didn't have the play calling of Sean McVay. It led to people believing in this conspiracy or whatever you want to call it, this theory that Sean McVay was playing more of a vanilla style offense because he expects to play the Bears in the postseason. To me, I don't buy that, one. But two, I think I do buy that. I'm not saying Goff is entirely a system quarterback. I'm not saying that. But he absolutely needs, everybody on the same page. He needs Sean McVay, to have a game plan. And when he doesn't, he gets rattled. When you hit him, he fumbles the ball. That's one of the scariest things. If Goff is under pressure, we've seen it the last 2 weeks. He doesn't even know what he's doing. He took a sack. This is the funny thing is, people will defend him because he took a sack when it was 4th down. Well, he wasn't going to throw it away. Honestly, I would have preferred he would have thrown it. I would have preferred an interception because an interception, like say a deep interception, that's like a punt. If you take a sack there, now they're getting 10 yards where it would have been if you just had an incomplete pass. So, no, that sack was inexcusable. And then I know people were saying the offensive line was bad, and they were awful. Let's be real here. John Sullivan is the biggest weak link of this offensive line. Now, mentally and football IQ wise, he's perfect for what they do, but he's just not physically talented at this point in his career, and that's okay. He's hitting the end of his career, and you're going to see that. But the thing I was seeing was, what's Goff supposed to do? When he was in the end zone, he got the safety, and I said, get rid of the ball. What? Just because there's tons of pressure in your face does not give you the okay to take a safety. That is just the worst situation.
Yeah. The safety was a killer.
That started because Todd Gurley ran 7 yards backwards. But this is not blaming Gurley because, I'm sorry, Gurley, if you gave Gurley 25 touches, you win this football game. I'm just going to say that right now.
Yeah. It started because of the kick return. The kick return was a disaster, and then Gurley. And there's a penalty in the kick return, and then Gurley, and then...
The phantom holding?
Yeah. So that...
that they will never show.
So...
You're better off taking a knee in the end zone. You get 25 yards.
Goff was 20 of 44, only had one drop against him, and but he was brutal, and he didn't really give you a chance to win. I don't know about I wouldn't have made the move to Mannion, even though I would love to see Mannion. I'm one of these few remaining Mannion guys who thinks he could play if he was surrounded by the starting lineup, but we'll never see that. That ship has sailed. But in terms of what he was sacked 4 times, 2 was on, according to Pro Football Focus, 1 was on Sullivan, that must have been the safety. 1 was on Saffold, and 2 were on Goff. Of his hits, Blythe gave up 2, and Sullivan gave up 2. And of his hurries, Sullivan gave up, holy crap, he was hurried 17 times, 7 of which from Sullivan, 3 of which from Blythe. So most of the pressures,
of the you know what? This, I guess you can't say it's all on Goff. It's Goff and the offensive line, because he was pressured.
Oh, absolutely.
He dropped back 48 times, and he was pressured on half of that. He was pressured, according to Pro Football Focus, 23 times. So almost half of his pressures, which is an enormous pressure rate. And, we talk about, the great players. You talk about Peyton Manning. You talk about Tom Brady. What was always the book on how to interrupt, the best quarterbacks? It's always pressure, and not only was this pressure in his face. This was pressure 7 from the center gap, 3 from the right guard, and what is that? 1 from the left, or 2 from the left guard? No, 5 from the right guard. So most of this pressure is coming up the middle, and that'll get you. Part of this is when you talk about Goff as a system quarterback, I'm going to argue that I prefer a system quarterback, over however you want to term this, these other quarterbacks, because you want a quarterback that is elevated, by the offense, is elevated by those around him. The only way you really win a championship these days is, with a unit, and that's what the Rams have. And it was short-circuited via pressure on Sunday night, so they just have to, go back to the drawing board and put everything back together and improve. And I have confidence that, like I said earlier, if they face this team again, they'll be better the second time. And just to hit on your point about the defense took a lot of credit when it was still a game. They kept them hanging in there when the offense was giving them absolutely nothing. They kept the game within. I mean, it was a 9-point game, even with the safety. You take the safety out, the defense had you within a 1-score game the entire game. So just kudos to those guys who have gotten a lot of crap this year, considering the hype that was laid on their feet at their feet. And now that they're whole, now that Talib's back in there, they made a much hyped quarterback on the other side of the field at his home. Put together the worst performance of his career. And so I like to see this team get another crack at the Bears, because honestly, I love the defense, but besides that, I'm not all that impressed.
Yeah, I mean, especially the way the Rams defense played. It's hard because it was only 15-6 because the defense. I mean, you were more likely to get points out of the Rams defense than you were their offense. And I would give, the Rams defense at least 3 of the 6.
I mean, it's a big deal that that Marcus Peters didn't house that pick. I mean, it looked at some point early in his return that he was going to break free and score, and I think, I'm not to criticize him for it, but that would have been a big play in that game if he'd have been able to house that pick. And I mean, look at the Bears. The Bears got a pick. Roquan Smith picks off a ball at like the 15-yard line or 20-yard line, doesn't get in, and they didn't score a touchdown off that, right?
You're right.
So, credit to both these defenses, and I'm not ready to hit the panic button. This team has 3 very winnable games. They have the easiest schedule to close out. They should be 14-2. We'll see if the Saints stumble and hand back home field, and from there you play on. Whether or not they, even though it's a difficult matchup to have to go to New Orleans, I have confidence that they could do it, and they just got to get better.
They absolutely do. I mean, that's the bottom line. But funny thing that JB Long brought up, friend of the podcast. Since 2014, every single Super Bowl winning team has had one game where they fell off a cliff, just like the Rams did, and lost without scoring a touchdown. Yeah. It's a pretty big pull there.
Usually, those games for New England Super Bowl championships, normally those games are in Miami. But I couldn't even remember the game that Brady got shut out by the Bills. That was one of the stats.
Oh yeah, of course. I remember that because I was watching. I was in Daytona Beach, Florida, when the Rams clinched the NFC West last year.
Of course, you remember.
And that TV was right next to that one that I was watching.
Oh, it was last year?
Yeah, I was watching right across at this bar right across from Daytona Speedway. That's how I remember.
Hopefully it's cherish those memories, because I'm sure it looks very different right now after the hurricane.
Yeah.
That whole area. I'm trying to find this. Anyway, yeah. Let's. So again, they laid an egg, and you get one of those when nobody expected them. Although I think someone on this podcast said they had a 95% chance of finishing 15-1. So
hey, the 5% came to fruition.
Tad optimistic. The 5% definitely came to fruition.
I won because I didn't say
16
100%.
16-0. Look at that.
Boom.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah. Okay. 16-0. I'm gonna have to go to Game Pass and watch that. At home?
Yeah.
I have totally blocked that game out.
Yep.
Oh, that was the game. There was no Brady. That was the game where they were all. That was the game where they didn't have a quarterback because Garoppolo and Brady. Brady was suspended. Garoppolo was.
Oh, that was
hurt.
early in. Then never
so they
mind.
had to, and Jacoby Brissett had to play with a broken hand. That was the game.
Never mind then.
Jacoby Brissett played with a broken throwing hand. Todd Brent. Yeah, okay. No wonder I blocked it out. I probably didn't even watch that game. Anyway, let's move on.
Yes, so Dom Hatfield is out for the year, unfortunately.
Speaking of injuries.
Suffered a meaningless injury on the kickoff, and he is going to have ankle surgery. Rams are promoting Trayvon Young, the rookie out of Louisville, 6th-round pick, from the practice squad.
He's already made plays in the NFL. Trey Young in this Niner game early on. So really big, I should say unfortunate, break for Dom Hatfield. And, really, he just another, one thing I thought that was super cool about that moment is, he's loaded up on the cart, and he's got that big brace on his leg. It was reported as an ankle injury. It looked like it was probably like a knee, or maybe a break. But he's loaded up on that cart, and you've got Bones coming over and giving him, love and giving him support. And even though it's a horrible moment for a young kid, who's making some money, getting paid to play the game. It's a nice little moment for Bones to come over and in the middle of the game to see him off. So get that thumbs up on the way out. And so that'll change some of the special teams looks. That's probably what you get Young in for. Maybe they'll move around now that Troy Hill isn't starting. That's a special teams guy, a guy with a lot of experience as a special teams guy that can, come in and help out. So there'll be some shuffling in that way, but certainly not anything that really affects, not an injury that affects the defense. Besides that, other big moments for me from this game, Rams were held to 14 total first downs, 214 yards. It really was offensively, some of these Jeff Fisher-like numbers, 21 of 45 throwing. And, all in all, I think, Jake, we got to flush this one. let's keep moaning until the end of this podcast and then just move on.
Yeah, let's just down the drain this game's going to go. Because this wasn't the Rams. This wasn't... I'll say this. This wasn't really even a statement game with the Bears. Because in a statement game, you have to have both sides of the ball, work for you. And to me, the Bears got by with a crappy offensive performance and a really good defensive performance, but as great as their defensive performance was, Goff missed a ton of throws. They gave it to the Bears. It was a mixture of both. It wasn't... I've seen, to me, Dallas's performance against New Orleans was more eye-opening. I felt like they really dominated that game. Once again, their offense didn't really do anything, just like the Bears. But, I felt like that was more of a dominant performance, especially because, with the Saints and everything, they were just coming off this crazy streak. I mean, they had won 10 straight games. So, I don't know. I told you.
Yeah, that was surprising. I think they were equally surprising to me, just because I'm not a big, I don't really think the Bears are that good. Then again, I'm not a big doubt. These are two teams I don't really. Dallas and the Bears are two teams right now that a lot of people are gushing over that I'm, still not very impressed with.
Yeah, I remember what I told you in the podcast last week. I said, earlier this week, I said, Rams Bears, we'll find out. Great offense versus great defense. We'll find out. With the Baltimore Ravens versus the Chiefs, and I said, Ravens have a legit shot. I think Lamar Jackson's going to be a big part of it.
That was a good game.
And Lamar Jackson's ability to extend plays and, obviously his running ability, I think really kept them on edge. Their defense had a hard time. Now, at the end of the game, they get that strip sack, and, Harrison Butker misses the field goal. So they go to overtime. But, it's amazing to me how many people were pinning that on, Lamar Jackson, failed. It was kind of let me put you at quarterback and let me have a 310-pounder hit you in the back at full speed as hard as possible. That generates enough force to move a truck. It blows
you were right. You
my
texted
mind.
me that at it. Right. Yeah, when you saw that, you texted me and said you thought that it was kind of unfair for people to criticize Lamar for the strip sack when it was a big time hit and he didn't see it, and it's not like the quarterbacks we saw on Sunday didn't turn the ball, or Sunday night didn't turn the ball over. Jared Goff, fumbled the ball too. So, it's both those guys still a lot of potential, still a long way to go. And the bottom line is you got to protect quarterbacks in this league, or they're not going to be able to perform.
Yeah, that's pretty obvious, as you can see from this game. So, again, we'll wrap this up. We'll throw it in the toilet, flush it. 15-6. The Bears trample the Rams. Any last words before we bury this?
Yeah. This is a nice opportunity for a bounce back, as Coach McVay said today, to set up for a comeback and, get the Eagles into town. I'm not quite sure if I like the fact that they're basically toast. Maybe they're, a little concerned that maybe they play a little loose, or, do some stuff, that they haven't been doing, changing their tendencies a little bit going into this game. But certainly, those West Coast Eagles fans probably won't be as passionate this week with their, team, with their title defense on the ropes. And, and then obviously, two divisional matchups to finish it up. But if this team finishes strong and finishes 14-2, I think you got to take it and have confidence. Oh, here's one thing that I'll get off my chest. the moaning, well, let me not go too crazy about this, but for a team that had to go through what they went through just recently with the Fisher era, 4-12 season, watching the torture of team after team after team, hyping itself up, on the cusp of breaking through and never breaking through, and then winning, what's the math, 21 of 27 games or something. And then the complaining I saw on Twitter last night was kind of bad. I think, and then to have Coach McVay, stand up, take the blame, that's honorable. And I'm not liking the couple appearances of people starting to criticize Coach McVay for taking blame. There's far too many players, far too many coaches in this league that screw up their game plan, screw up their teams, and just deflect, and never take an ounce of blame. So, obviously some of it is gamesmanship, trying to, take the heat off your team when they screw up. But he is in charge of this. This is his team. He is ultimately responsible for the wins and losses. So for him to have a disappointing loss on the road, especially one in which his offense was just disgustingly bad, and anybody that can criticize the man for doing that, really, it's really misguided and disappointing, and that I'm going to unfollow that person on Twitter or block because it's just worthless. And, just a reminder, Rams fans, just remember what you've got. You've got an 11-2 team, a team that for all intents and purposes is a favorite, if not the favorite to win this year. So enjoy the ride and get back on the horse on Sunday and root for your team.
Yeah. I think that's very well said. I think really, you can complain. I mean, Goff played awful. McVay didn't have the ball. Like, they didn't run the ball enough. I totally agree with you. I didn't like the whole.
Oh, you can complain about the decisions.
Yeah.
But to crush McVay for having the balls to stand up and take blame. I mean, moan about the guys who deflect and don't take the ball.
I'm just here so I don't get
moan
fined.
about the guy who's I mean, there's so many coaches that screw up every week and blame officials and blame, blame a million different things. We had a coach in this town recently, or was that the coach? Yeah, the coach who was blaming the sky cam. Remember what was the punt fumble that occurred?
Huh?
Where they were blaming the fact that
what sport?
We couldn't figure out. There was a game 2 years ago with the Rams where there was a fumble, and they were blaming that it hit the wire, the guide wire.
Oh my god!
The guide wire for the sky cam, and we couldn't even. Anyway,
that's you're grasping at straws there. That's pretty obvious. I definitely agree. Kind of tired of hearing all the blame and everything. Have it in the right form of mind. I mean, case in point, Todd Gurley is the best running back in the NFL, and in a 15-6 game, you should be running Todd Gurley more than 11 times. I think if anything, the thing that was a little worrisome is that Sean McVay used his timeouts. The Rams are ranked 32nd in timeout usage. I think that. Oh,
you can criticize him for that.
Yeah.
That stuff that we hit on him even when they win.
Yeah.
That's a trend that he needs to get better at as he evolves as a head coach. That's fine. Criticize him for his game plan. Criticize him for his game management. the guy stands up there like, I don't want to say like a man, but he stands up there and does what he should do, takes responsibility as he should. That's something to be proud of. That's not something to criticize.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree there. You're not going to get any debate with me. I mean, obviously that was my guy, so it's like I'm going to be the last one. I mean, I'll take full responsibility when McVay has a bad game, and I'll obviously throw some blame his way. But he's 32. He's only going to get better and better and better and better. And this might a loss like this. I do remember when Philly last year, they had a loss, and people just were kind of like, "There's no way without Carson Wentz that they're just not. They're the worst team." And
that was me.
Yeah, and that was me. And so they were the 1 seed, and they lose that game in the regular season.
It was the Dallas game right after the Rams.
Yeah,
it was the Dallas game right after they lost when Foles was a mess. And then you had Reich and DiFilippo and Peterson totally changed everything over the 2-week bye they had going to the playoffs and did a masterful job.
Yeah, it's very true. And I guess really what we're trying to say is the season isn't over. The Rams are the first team to clinch the playoffs. And I want to throw this quickly out there, and we're going to end this thing. Why is it okay for every team in the NFL to lose a game? And it's like when the Rams lose, they're soft. How do you even quantify soft?
Well, no. It was even before. That's the other thing I was going to bring up, and I didn't get. It's like the worst part about yesterday was that Cowherd had all that trash on his show about the Rams, and then it kind of like the Rams kind of supported it with the play, and like they didn't even like deserve any of that drag. They didn't deserve to get dragged the way he dragged them until yesterday. It was like a premature drag that like made everything come true. It was insane.
Oh, I know. But like, Joe, how do you like, this is my question to you and the listeners and everyone. How do you quantify soft? You can't. There's no
right.
It's all opinion.
It's in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah, it's all opinion. Yeah. And if they're a soft 11-1 team, they're still the best team in the NFL by
take soft every time.
By that virtue. I mean, I'll take a soft 11-1 team than a feisty 6-7 team. I mean, so the Carolina Panthers. Oh, they're so grimy and they have so many gamers. Listen to these keywords that these analysts use that clearly don't A, watch film, B, have no idea what they're talking about, and C, aren't even watching the games. It's really funny, honestly. If you want to see comedy, it's knowledge-based comedy. If you have an idea of what you're watching, you know what you're seeing week in and week out, and you know who the best teams are, go and watch some of these analysts that are getting paid to talk when they don't even know what they're talking about. Joe, it's hilarious on Sundays. Like I
try not to.
I die laughing.
I try not to watch those games.
It's really funny. But yeah. So, but before we go, I do want to give a little not a shout out because that's not the type of frame of what I. Anyway, it's kind of a memorial little thing for Isaiah Robertson. Really unfortunate. Rams legendary linebacker was drafted with Jack Youngblood, wore number 58, and he passed away last week due to a car accident. He was driving a limo and his limo skidded, and then he came back careening into the road and was hit by an oncoming vehicle. So very, very sad, very tragic. Kind of came out of nowhere. This is somebody I actually just established contact with. He added me on Facebook, and we were putting together some plans to have him on the podcast. And it just kind of shows you, how like life is like just
fleeting.
I mean, it's just crazy, honestly. You never know how long you have. just very tragic. And he was such a great guy. Established an alcohol and a drug abuse center right by. He was just coming back from talking to a high school team. So it's just, that's the type of person that we lost in the Ramley. And it's very unfortunate. And so I do send thoughts and prayers out to his family, his friends, and anyone close to him. So if you haven't already, and there are people to reach out to, and you have them at arm's length, be sure to reach out to them and send them your condolences. On that sad note, rest in peace, Isaiah. This has been the Downtown Rams podcast. He is Joe Curley. I'm Jake Ellenbogen, and we will be back Thursday, I believe, for a Rams-Eagles preview. So everyone, have a great rest of your week. We'll talk to you then. Later.